This is high tech.
You're ready. Go ahead, sir. We're recording.
Just say your name. We know, and what else say underneath you again?
Thank you. Dr. Eugene Lipov. Eugene, last name Lipov.
Dr. Lipov, I didn't realize this. It's been over a decade since you've been looking into the idea of changing the terminology for post-traumatic stress. Why is it taking so long to get that change going?
Well, if I may, let's go back to the history. So the first person who came up with the term was not me. It was Dr. Frank Ogberg, a very famous psychiatrist who came up with the term Stockholm Syndrome. So, he's been around a long time. So in about 2009, he came up with that term. He and Pete Chiarelli, a four-star general who was in charge of suicide prevention for the U.S. Army, went to the American Psychiatric Association in 2012 when they were changing from DSM-4 to DSM-5, and they asked to change the name to save lives because they felt it's over-stigmatizing and it leads to death. So I got into the action about 2016 because I became friends with Dr. Frank Ogberg. I'm an anesthesiologist, I'm not a psychiatrist. And then, so I came up with a treatment for PTSD or PTSI, which I think is the right term. And since Frank is getting kind of older in years, he's 86 now, he kind of passed over the responsibility to me. So to give you a direct answer why it has not happened, I think there is a number of reasons. I think reason number one, doctors in general are very slow to adopt any change. The name PTSD was coined in 1980 in DSM-3. So it's a disorder. The reason the name should be changed, that's what Frank believes and I believe, is because it's a biological change. When somebody has a severe trauma or multiple small traumas, fight and flight system activates part of the brain called the amygdala. And as long as it stays like that, people have symptoms. So before, people called PTSD an invisible wound because you couldn't really see it. It's not like a broken leg, which is easy to see. But with a modern technology such as functional MRI and PET scans, you can actually see the trauma.
You can actually see it on a scan.
Yes, sir.
Which means it's an injury.
That's precisely right. That's our point. I lost your picture, my friend.
Yeah, hang on. My battery's going. I'm plugging in my power now. Hold on a second. This is, it would have been better if my computer would work. Let's see if it works.
It is better that way.
Am I back? I'm back.
You're back.
There it is.
Okay, so you want to ask the last question again, and we'll go from there.
You can see it in brain scans. It's a physical injury.
That's correct. The other part that to keep in mind, when you have something physical, let's say a broken leg in a dog and a broken leg in a human looks the same, right? You can actually see an extra broken leg. So PTSD happens in dogs. In fact, 25% of dogs from military come back from Iraq have something called veterinary PTSD. I was the first one also to treat a dog with PTSD using a stellate. So my point is a physiological response to the body. So it's nothing mysterious about it. It's the real deal. You can actually see it on scans. Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
I did freeze up.
It froze up there. That's okay. But now let's take this back to, I know with PTSD, coined in 1980, that was really related to Vietnam vets. But these issues have gone back since probably the beginning of warfare, right?
Well, it started actually, the first description, most description of PTSD has been military. So it was called a tremble by the Romans, so 2,000 years ago. But if you think about it, the people who usually suffer the most PTSD is actually the abused women. As long as humanity has been around, PTSD has been with us. So the first name for PTSD in a modern era was soldier's heart, Civil War. Then it became it was shell shock, World War I, battle fatigue, World War II, Vietnam syndrome, Vietnam, and then PTSD came around.
Why is it important to change that name now?
The reason it's important is because, as Pete Shirelli and Frank Ogberg have said, if you can get rid of PTSD name, people will be less stigmatized, and then we seek care and survive. So, interestingly enough, nobody's put it to a test before. So I did a survey, which I published in 2023, and presented the American Psychiatric Association, the body that controls the naming. And we found, based on 3,000 people, we did a survey, about 1,500 people wrote us back. Turns out, yes, if you change the name, the stigma will get better. So if stigma gets better, there's a number of studies shows that if the stigma can be removed, then people seek care and they're not going to die.
But on top of that, we're not just talking war vets now. We're talking people throughout society that have sustained trauma.
Correct.
Other people.
Correct. Because if you look at PTSD rates, so approximately 2 to 10 million people in the military or veterans have PTSD. About 10 times more of that happen. There's 10 times more women with PTSD after sexual assault and other trauma than from all the military combined. So all type of people get PTSD. In our offices, for example, here in Stella Center, we treat children, women, men, special forces, police, victims of crime. There's no difference. It's the same. It's one commonality is the fight and flight system is stuck in on position. So we're trying to reverse that.
Well, the key here is to change it in the DSM. That's what you really want to do, right?
Correct. So let me tell you what I've done about that so far. In order to change the name in a modern era, what you need to do is you need to send an official proposal to the DSM-5 committee, and say, I would like to change the name. What I find most interesting is the number one requirement to change the name. You need to be able to demonstrate that the current name causes harm. If you can demonstrate that based on their website, they will change the name, right? That's reasonable. So based on at least my publication, clearly keeping the name causes harm because it causes stigma, which we know causes problems. So right now, DSM has received all the materials they need to make a decision as of September 7th of this year. So it's going to the steering committee, and they're trying to make a decision now. So that's why it's so important right now to anybody who's interested in the name to help that happen. To do that, one, your help would be amazing to spread the word. Two, on my website, which is drueugenelipov.com, if you hit the button PTSI, there is a letter writing campaign there. People can click on it and sign their names. That gets saved to my website. And I want to take those letters, put them in boxes, and send them to the APA so they can see how many people truly want that change.
Have you getting a lot of exposure, media coverage about this currently?
No, definitely not enough.
Why not?
Well, we did. Well, let me tell you what I've had so far. So we had Frank and I have been in Chicago, CBS News. I was on Fox News local, but I've been trying to get on other stations. My PR person's tried to pitch it, but nobody's interested. I don't know.
Well, I saw you had a lot of videos online there. I was kind of surprised, and they're pretty current, going on now.
I'm trying, sir. I think it's very important.
What about, we're really interested in just doing a story about honor for all. In fact, one of Kent Hall, he had an interesting story of his life. But then I was talking to Tom Mahaney, and I realized this is a lot bigger than just a couple of guys hanging out in Williamston. But this is Michigan and it's a local story, but suddenly we're looking at a national story. It may
No, no.
be international.
Yeah, if I may, let me tell you a couple of quick things. So number one, Tom Mahaney is an amazing man. That man has been a very good friend of Frank Ogburg. That's how I met Tom. He would go on hunger strikes to change the names. He got 40 states to change the name PTSD to PTSI in Congress. Not an easy task, you can imagine. And then PTSD is an international problem. And before, when Frank was writing about it in 1980, we're looking about 6-7% of people had PTSD then. After COVID and the wars and everything, the numbers, I can't even guess the numbers, at least 40-50%. The thing that people don't realize, if you don't take this seriously, here's what PTSD does. It increases aging speed. You can actually measure that by epigenetic clocks. People with PTSD has twice the rate of heart attacks. So if you ignore that, people are going to have more heart attacks, definitely more suicides, no question. They're going to age quicker. It's going to be a global epidemic, even more than it is. So if we can at least start talking about it as a biologic, let's start treating it. It is an international story. If any ideas you can help us promote it nationally, internationally, I'm on board. I'm talking to the people who are in contact with Ukrainian Department of Defense. I'm trying to bring stuff we do to help them. But it needs to be embraced as soon as possible.
Well, changing the DSM, it's been changed for other terms, right? Some of the things that we're familiar with. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite topics, actually. So the first term that was changed, the DSM-1 came out in 1952. So being a homosexual was considered a mental disorder. Interestingly enough, it was not well tolerated. And by DSM-2, it was gone, which is, I think, is pretty obvious. I think most people today would say that's crazy talk, but whatever, not to use a hyperbole. But what's interesting, between DSM-4 and DSM-5 in 2012, when Pete Shirelli and Frank Ogburg were trying to change the name, a few names were changed. One of them was learning disability. And the DSM committee felt that this was, probably rightfully so, that this was stigmatizing. And they changed it to something like alternate learning style, things like that, less stigmatizing. There was another one about sexual misalignment or misalignment disorder. What's interesting, all the names that was changed, another one's conversion disorder. The main impetus is that all of those terms were stigmatizing. Of all the terms that encompasses is a very small population. PTSD is a huge population, clearly stigmatizing, and it was still ignored. So the reason, I'm somewhat of a scientist. I write a number of medical papers and things like that. And the reason that I have tried to do, I've done the sciencey stuff, but I think this is a social level decision. There's no scientific reason that anybody could say, well, there's no objective findings at all for PTSD. That's just not true. There's a whole industry of functional MRI, brain scans, DNA analysis. There's biological changes. There's no debate of that. But they're still talking about, oh, no, we don't want to change the name for reason X, reason Y. I don't understand those reasons. Nobody will be able to explain it to me.
Maybe it costs a lot to reprint it. Maybe people have to relearn that term. But explain again how this could be stigmatizing with the word disorder versus injury.
Yeah, so that's a fair question. So I'm sorry about that. Let me turn this off. All this technology. So the reason, let's start with the general, right? General is not a scientist. He's not a psychiatrist. He is a 4-star general. Currently, he's retired, but he was then in charge of his guys, right? So, and a lot of, unfortunately, during Iraq War, many people committed suicide. So he went at the essence, like, what can we do to help you? And they said, if you say I have a disorder, it means, number one, I can snap out of it. So it's all in my head. It's a psychiatric, but it's not all in your head. It's a physiologic change. If we feel there is a real problem and we don't, if I say I have PTSD, help me, if it feels like it's the same as having a broken leg, I'm going to go get treated. If I come and tell you I have PTSD, you probably remember during World War II, there was Gerald Patton there was a classic excerpt from what he did. This guy was cowering in the hall because he had PTSD. He came by and called him a coward and slapped him inside the head. That's not an effective treatment for PTSD. But if somebody says, look, you have a problem, let's help you, people will just get embraced. Instead of being shamed that they're weak, they have weakness of the soul, or they're scared. And the worst part to me is you can snap out of it. That's not true. You cannot snap out of a broken leg. You can snap. If you take that attitude, right there tomorrow, many less suicides will happen. So what a simple change. And it costs nothing. Reprinting it, okay, so if doctors have to learn a new term, oh my God, that's just horrible. To save lives, that's our oath. We're supposed to help, right? Not go out, I don't want to learn anything new. Doctors are supposed to learn new things every day. This is our function.
One other thing, explain your treatment. You were able to help a dog with trauma.
Yep.
And people too. What is that treatment?
Oh, the treatment I came up with, I'm an anesthesiologist, so I'm not really a psychiatrist, right? At all. So I've been doing something called stellate ganglion block. It's an injection in the neck where we can reset and fight and flight system. So what PTSD or PTSI is when somebody has trauma, any kind of mammal, it could be a rat, it could be human, it could be a dog, doesn't matter. Trauma activates fight and flight system. If that system gets stuck, that's what PTSD is, or PTSI. This block can reset that to before trauma state in 10, 15 minutes. It also takes away doom, which is really interesting. So let me tell you a story about doom. So a lot of patients with PTSD report feeling of doom, that something bad is going to happen. So, and after the block, a lot of times it goes away. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. I don't understand why it would be. So there is a condition called pheochromocytoma. It's a rare tumor of the adrenal. It produces norepinephrine, fight and flight transmitters. Number 3 symptoms for pheochromocytoma is doom. If you take their gland out, the doom goes away. That tells you it's a biologic change. It's real. There's no craziness around it, right?
How often are you administering that treatment?
Well, keep in mind, I run Stella Center. I'm a medical director. We have 40 sites across the nation, 4 in Australia and 1 in Israel. Unfortunately, 1 in Israel is inactive now. Everybody has been deployed. But we do, I think, 1,000 to 3,000 people a quarter. I do anywhere 10 to 20 people a day in Chicago. That's our flagship here. But it seems to work very well. It also works across ages. I did it on my son 3 times, and it helped him a lot. So you can be children.
Are a lot of people doing this, or just you?
Well, I have 40 associates. It's done quite a bit for special forces, like in Fort Bragg, Tripler Hospital. In fact, Fort Bragg, Tripler Hospital, and Lenchheim, Germany, hospitals, 3 hospital system. They published a study in Journal of American Psychiatric Association, published in 2019, showing that it's effective. No, it's been adopted in the military. The first paper came out in 2008, and then at least 5 to 10 military hospitals have been using it routinely since.
And has it moved outside of military uses to other treatments for other people?
In
other trauma
in Stella,
victims?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. For Stella, yes. In military hospital, by definition, they're the military. But Stella, I think only a quarter of our patients are military. Everybody else is civilian. And again, the most common patients with PTSD are abused women. And look at the statistics. 1 out of 3 women in the United States have sexual attack in their lifetime. 50% will develop PTSD. So you're looking at 1 out of 6 for 150 million people. Huge numbers.
I just want to ask you if you want to say that again, because you say PTSD. I thought that's the word you want to change here.
Sorry about that. Okay. All right.
So maybe you want to repeat that again.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Keep in mind that 1 out of 3 women in the United States have PTSI. I'm sorry. 1 out of 3 women in the United States have sexual trauma based on FBI statistics. Half of those women who had sexual trauma will develop PTSI. So you're looking at 1/6 out of 150 million people have PTSI in the United States, just women. 25% to 30% of first responders have PTSI. And it goes on from there. Childhood abuse people, huge numbers.
Well, people working in that field, consulting, helping those folks that are those traumatized, do they use that term PTSI now?
I'm not sure.
Some of them?
Nah, frankly, I'm not sure. It's interesting. I've seen PTSI term being used in Canada by military personnel. In fact, we have people coming here, first-year operators from Canada. I think Prince Henry started to use the term PTSI. So it's getting there, but it's not getting there quickly enough. So I don't want to show you my graphic here. PTSI, not PTSD. Right? And this is my podcast, Brain, Hope, Reality. So we're trying to talk about this as much as we can. We also have a pin and a movement called It's PTSI. We have a song that was released today. It's called It's PTSI. So we're trying the best we can.
And so, being that something's coming up in November, it may change. Is that the thought here? You're on the road to actually changing this thing after 11 years.
I think it's going to happen. I had a great conversation with Pete Shirelli, and I said, what would you like me? In fact, I have a picture of him wearing my pin on our website. It's PTSI. So I said, what would you like me to put on the website from you? What kind of commentary would you like? He said, it's really simple. It's about time. That's his quote. And he said, if you get that, I'm getting you a 20 ounce of beer and you're going to enjoy drinking it with me. Because he's been trying to do it since 2012. And he's a 4-star.
Should I interview him?
I've invited them.
You think he would do this? Would he talk to me?
I don't know, sir. He is a busy guy. I've talked to him about it. I can try to connect you with him. Well,
we got plenty we've talked to already, but it just everybody keeps talking about him, which kind of begs the question. Maybe I ought to look into that. What else do I need to ask you about all of this? I think we've covered it good. Maybe I want to talk to Dr. Ackberg. I'm going to call him on the phone after we're done here. I got to get him to do an interview by Zoom. So I'm familiar with him going way back because I used to work in local media up in Lansing back in the 80s, So right. He was a guy. He was a top guy in Michigan.
He was. Well, he was the number 2 man for NIMH, National Institute of Mental Health. But I got to tell you, so I will throw something back at you. If you have any connection in national, international media, I think this deserves international attention.
Well, I'm thinking this could be a story that NewsHour might be interested in. PBS, I know they did a piece on Tom back in 2012. It wasn't about this, but it was about something related to that. Stop loss, I think it was at the time. It might have been stop loss, one of the campaigns he had in Washington. But this is the sort of thing, and you're probably not the guy to answer this too. Maybe though. stats regarding suicide and that sort of thing going on right now? You don't know what the numbers are on that regarding vets.
Actually, I do know more about it, and unfortunately, I need to know. So there was a publication. I gave a presentation at American Psychiatric Association 2015 about suicides and prevention using this procedure, stellar ganglion block. So there was a paper that came out based on review of records in about 2014 that 22 people per day are killing themselves. A friend of mine has been assessing the numbers in more detail. He told me, and I don't think he published it yet, but it's hotly debated, shall we say. It's over 30 per day right now in the military, which numbers it's mind-boggling. And keep in mind, the other thing is, if you're wondering why I'm so passionate about it, keep in mind, I'm an anesthesiologist, right? It's not totally outside my realm normally. My mother took her life when I was a surgical resident. So I understand suicide. I understand what it does to the people. There's also a term that we use now, secondary PTSD. It should be called secondary PTSI, meaning like my father came back from World War II, severe PTSD, PTSI. He gave to my mother, who led to her suicide. So if I can stop it for other families, I think it's huge.
Well, it's one of those things that hasn't been talked about probably most of our lifetimes. I think I had an uncle that committed suicide. It was not talked about. I didn't really know about that till more recently. Just
Right.
knew he died young. I didn't know why.
The same thing, right? We talked about shaming, right? Stigma. Is there a stigma as broken leg? Somebody has a broken back. Oh my God. Oh, yes. Help me. Get me. Everybody's going, oh, so sad. Broken leg. It's like, well, you have somebody killed the cell in your family. Shh, don't tell anybody. But that goes on like this in generations. Plus, keep in mind, PTSI, once somebody has PTSI, it goes 3 generations. It gets transmitted genetically through epigenetic change. So that's why it's so important to talk about it and treat it, because you can save lives, prolong life, healthy life, and prevent suicides by changing one name. Really?
Well, you're doing a good job marketing.
I'm trying, buddy.
You could market more. I would like to use a little bit of your PSA in our segment too.
Use all of it.
And do you have any images like brain scans or anything that I could use to show what you're talking about?
The easiest way to do it, the real ones are not as obvious, but if you look at the one, the PSA, that's pretty straightforward. Just use those images. There are 2 images.
That's what I'll do. I was just thinking if there were any other clinical images that are floating around, because I haven't looked that deep into this, but I just
there. In order to understand those, you have to be a true egghead, and those are really complicated.
Yeah, I know.
It's not that simple. I can. You know what? I'll send you those. I will send you an article that was published in American ASA, American Society of Anesthesia. They did PET scans, which is an advanced scanner, on PTSD. They did the block, and they followed up, and they saw a deactivation of amygdala, saying that it got better. I'll send you that.
Okay. I think we're good, Dr. Lipov. You did great. I like your studio. I like the fact that you can record it for me.
Anytime.
We talked about doing Riverside, and I did a couple of them back then because we could do it. The trouble was most of our interviewees, well, I was having trouble getting it open, so I had to use my phone, but you had to have people have Chrome and all like that. And this was like during COVID, we went to all of this sort of thing, and it's changed the way we do TV now. We're using Zoom, and some of my cohorts were doing Riverside. I think they're back to shooting everything in the field now. I'd rather do more Riverside, but it requires people that are a little bit more camera savvy, including me now, obviously. But I don't know why my Google Chrome was not updating. I downloaded it. I installed it twice. It still didn't.
I don't know. So I will send you this. Once it's processed, I will send it to you. Feel free to cut anything, do anything you want with it. If you know people in big press, small press, This is the
Well,
focus of my life.
it just struck me this could be a national news hour story, or they should get on it. They probably won't take what we do, but this is going to run the second week in November. It's the Veterans Day story that we're going to do. So that's how we got onto it. And like I said, we were more curious about this interesting life of Kent Hall.
Right.
And then, well, there's a bigger, stronger angle than just the guy who robbed banks, So we got a highly promotable story here. So
what do we think? Hopefully it's relatable too.
Yeah. Thanks for talking.
Thank you. I will send you information.
Have less time on your recording here.
I'll send it to you, sir. Have a good day.
All right. Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All the struggle and pain I leave